everyone, this is Ashley Tucker from My Favorite Things. For today's video, I'm going to be making some Christmas tags, and instead of using a tag die set, I wanted to show you how I like to use just regular shape die sets in order to make my tags. First things first though, I need some cute images for my tags, and for that I chose the Friesen Season stamp set, which has all of these cute, adorable little critters. I picked out 5 of the critters and I put them in my Misty tool, and then I stamped them onto some Neenah Classic Crest Solar White cardstock using a Copic friendly black ink. As you can see, I am now coloring those in with my Copic markers, and if you are curious about any of the colors that I used, I do have the marker caps off to the side. The fox was colored off camera, but I did use the same oranges for the fox that I used for the cat. For my coloring of these, I colored all of the fur on the critters first, and then once all of the fur was colored, I moved on to working on the accessories. Now, as for picking colors for those accessories, I thought about the colors on the papers that I was going to use for my tags, and I knew that those colors were reds and greens, and I wanted to keep all of the colors on the accessories very close to those colors on the papers so that these could be very cohesive. I think it's a really good idea to stick with a color story for your entire project instead of mixing and matching a lot. For example, if I used those really traditional red and green backgrounds for my tags, and then I colored in my images using really non-traditional bright colors, they would look really funny together. It wouldn't look like they go together. So that's why I think it's a good idea to choose some colors for your whole project and kind of stick with them a little bit everywhere. And then the whole thing will look a lot more cohesive. Once I finished up all of this coloring, I grabbed the coordinating dies and I taped them down onto each one of the critters, and I ran it through my die cutting machine, and then I set these aside while I picked out the tag dies that I wanted to use. Now, like I said earlier, I'm not going to use a traditional tag making die set. I'm going to pull out instead some shape dies. Now you can turn pretty much any shape into a tag as long as it's not too big. If the tag is too big, of course, it's going to be a little bit awkward to put on a gift. Otherwise, you can turn pretty much any shape die into a tag. I really like to use the nested die sets whenever you have the nested die sets of shapes, because then you can use 2 different sizes and then 2 different papers and mix them together, and I think that that really looks good. And that's what I'm going to do today. So the die set that I chose for my tags is called the Inside and Out Stitched Arch die set from MFT, which has a bunch of these nested arch dies. So I took the 2 largest and I'm going to cut the larger of the 2 out of a solid cardstock, and then the smaller of the 2 out of a patterned paper. The patterned paper that I'm using comes from 2 different patterned paper pads. One of them is the Joyful Plaid patterned paper pad, and the other one is the Perfect Plaid patterned paper pad, which is also a bit of a tongue twister. Try saying that 5 times fast. Perfect Plaid patterned paper pad. Perfect Plaid patterned paper plaid. I could barely do it twice. Anyway, I decided to do another tag using a different die set just so that I could give you another example. For this one, I'm using the Wonky Stitched Mini Slimline dies, which are meant for slimline cards, but I'm going to turn them into a tag. I really love using these slimline dies for things other than slimline cards, because anytime that I can get more use out of a die set, that is a good thing for me. Alright, so I have all of my papers cut, and as you saw, I added a hole to the top of each of them using a hole punch. Not a fancy hole punch or anything, just your regular office hole punch. I've been using the same one for over 10 years now. It's a really old hole punch, but it gets the job done. Now I'm going to add some string to the top of each of my tags. I'm using embroidery floss for this. I'm using a dark green embroidery floss, and I did add 3 strands of it through there so that it's nice and thick. And as you can see, I put the patterned paper on top of the solid paper, and I really like the look of those layered together. You could, of course, leave the string like this, and that would be perfectly fine. But if you want to dress it up just a little bit more, you can add a little bow at the bottom of the string right up close next to the paper. And I'm going to do that using some red and white twine. It did take me a little while to mess with this bow until I really liked it and it looked perfect. Thank goodness for video editing. I could speed up this whole time where I am messing with the bow until it looked just right so that you don't have to watch that at normal speed. Next, I stamped some sentiments for each of my 5 tags. This, of course, is totally optional. You don't have to have sentiments on these tags, but I decided why not have a few little sentiments on there. I stamped these sentiments from the Itty Bitty Holiday stamp set, which is an older set, and it might not be in stock right now. So if you're interested in it, I definitely recommend hitting the Notify Me button on the website, and then you can put your email in, let them know that you're interested in it, and as soon as it comes back into stock, they'll send you an email. So I stamped those sentiments using Versamark ink, and I embossed them with white embossing powder, cut them out with some sentiment strip dies, and then I popped them up onto the tags with some foam tape, and I popped up the critters with foam tape as well. To finish up all of these tags, I first added some enamel dot embellishments in red and green on all of them, and then I used my white gel pen to add some highlights to each of the critters, and then finally I used my Wink of Stella glitter brush and I just went over each of the sentiment strips. Now, when it comes to actually using these tags, you can, of course, write on the back of them. I personally decided to write in between the 2 papers, and that's just the way that I chose to do it. I'm going to be handing these gifts directly to people, so they're going to know who it's from. But if you do want to write like a little message, the back is probably the best place to do the writing. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you really enjoyed today's video and that it gave you some inspiration. I hope that you got some ideas on how you could take die sets that you already have in your stash and turn them into tags for either Christmas or birthdays. I hope you have a wonderful day today, and I'll see you next time.